Welcome
Bienvenido!
and welcome in, travelers. You're listening to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We're your podcast for escaping life's monotony, indulging in your wildest travel fantasies, and discovering the constant beauty of this ever-changing world.
You may experience some turbulence along the way, so buckle up and keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle as we wander on to our next destination. On today's episode, we'll be singing the Lullaby of Broadway as we head into part 1 of our series on the Big Apple, New York City.
Welcome to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We're your navigators, Allison
and Regan. And today we'll be jumping into all things New York City in part 1 of a 2-part series. So there's a lot of ground to cover, and it's a major destination for people all over the world. So we'll jump right in. But of course, we have our icebreaker. And today's icebreaker is, what is your favorite city and why? Allie?
Okay, so this might come as a surprise because if you know me, you know I'm a Yankees fan, but Boston is actually my favorite city. I really enjoy all of the history. Dad, that's for you. I know you love your history, so shout out to you. It has a lot of history, and if you've listened to our Cape Cod episode, we talk a lot about what you can see in Boston. There's lots of free things to do. There's beautiful buildings. And in my opinion, it's an easy to navigate city, which is always nice. I think it's great for anyone just starting to travel. It's easy to navigate. It's beautiful. And it's a great place to experience history. Regan, what is your favorite?
Yeah, I love that. Boston is such a great city. I'm going to go to the other end of the country, and I'm going to say New Orleans. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the city, but I have determined that I think it is my favorite because it is beautiful. It is unlike any other city I've ever been to. It's incredibly unique in terms of the architecture and the food. Like, the Cajun style food is amazing. There's fun nightlife and everything, like the trolley cars that go by. Like I said, it's just a really unique place, and I'm a big foodie, so like that, it has it going for it. The first experience we had in New Orleans, Allie and I were together, and there was a Mardi Gras parade going on, and let's just say it was scarring for small children. But the second time, and since then that I've been there, I've fallen in love with the city. So yeah, New Orleans.
I was going to say, I'm quite surprised you picked that one, but I get your explanation now because I was a little scarred when we first went. I have yet to go back. I need to, let New Orleans redeem itself, but yeah, the first time was a wee bit scarring. Yeah, just don't bring kids. That's our hot tip for New Orleans.
Yes, definitely a city best enjoyed by adults, I would say.
Yeah, especially during Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get to the city we want to talk about today. Like Regan said earlier, we have a 2-part series coming out for New York City. So in this first episode, we'll be covering traveling to and around the city, some general New York City travel tips, and some best things to do to make the most of your time in the greatest city in the world, even though neither of us picked that, but it is still a great city.
Well, according to Hamilton, it is the greatest city in the world, so... even though it was really Lin-Manuel Miranda, but okay. Anyways.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll give it to him. But traveling to and from and around New York City and accommodations are what we want to start off with here. So if you're not from New York City, traveling to and from there is fairly easy, in my opinion at least. They have a couple of airports, so there's lots of different options, whether you're coming from another country or just traveling domestically. LaGuardia is a great airport. JFK and Newark are all great options. You have the pretty typical transportation options for a city, like a train, a bus. They have Greyhound and mega buses. You can drive in, but I wouldn't really recommend that. You're going to spend a lot of time looking for parking. You'll probably get some road rage with all the traffic. If you've even just driven in the state of New York, we are crazy drivers. So multiply that by 10 in New York City, and you're probably bound to get a scratch on your car. So I highly recommend finding a different option. I'm sure Rian can speak to this. They had to drive a U-Haul in New York City when she was living there, so I'm sure she has some stories for that. But those are some great ways to travel around New York. But the accommodations, like most cities, they have lots of options. Of course, there's hotels, but if you've been here for a while, you know we are diehard Airbnb fans. And we highly recommend staying outside of Times Square. That might be shocking because you might have read blogs or had friends tell you, like, stay in Times Square, it's close to everything and all the action. But if you want a more quieter environment, maybe you have kids that are going to bed earlier, you're going to want to stay outside of Times Square. And there's plenty of great options. You can stay uptown, go to Brooklyn, and you can still get those great city vibes with a little less noise. And New York City is known for its brownstones. So if you get a chance to stay in one of those, that's a great option. I've used Airbnb to stay in a brownstone before. It was an awesome experience. And then there's also surprisingly camping. I have done the camping option before as well. Um, Not completely ideal, but it's a cool experience if you're into that and want a cheaper option. So that's a little more on accommodations. And then getting around New York City, we briefly touched on a little bit, but there's the MTA system of subways and buses. Fairly easy to navigate as well if you know how to use a map at all. In the subways, if you have a phone, they have an app. The City Mapper app is for easy navigation. Of course, there's Lyft, Uber, taxis. And then, like we said before, don't drive. You can, but we strongly suggest using public transportation if possible. So that was a lot that I threw at you. Anything that you want to add, Regan?
Yeah, I want to just echo that you're welcome to drive into New York City and leave your car somewhere in a parking garage. That's like fairly easy. You're still going to get that road rage cuz traffic is insane. But don't like drive yourself around. Like don't drive yourself from the hotel to the museum, etc. Like leave your car for the duration of your trip and rely on public transit. And don't be intimidated when you're trying to navigate. It's really just like a huge grid, and the City Mapper app makes it really, really easy. You just put in where you're starting from, where you want to go, and it tells you which subway to take, how long you'll be walking for, what the recommended routes are. It's super, super easy. But New York is a big place. I mean, it's not that big of a place. It's only a couple miles long, but it feels huge, of course. But once you realize that the avenues run north to south and increase in number from east to west, and that streets run east to west and increase in number from south to north, then you're kind of able to orient yourself. You come out of the subway, you look right and left. Oh, okay. 61st is to my right and 62nd is to my left. Here's the direction I need to go in and figure it out from there. So don't be intimidated. You'll figure it out. And no matter how long your trip is, if you'll be taking more than 12 one-way trips during your stay, the week pass for the MTA will be cheaper than paying for individual trips. So pretty much any time that you're going to New York, get the week-long pass, even if you're not going to be there for a week, because it's going to be just better bang for your buck, as the saying were. And also something to note, like transferring between subways, say that you're going to Times Square and it tells you that you need to go from the 2 train to the 4 train or something like that. That transfer from one train to the other does not cost you anything. So that will be considered one trip. Those are not two separate trips. When you're on the subway, you might see like an empty car and be like, wow, yay, I don't have to like squeeze in with other people. Amazing. But I would avoid that because an empty car, and trust me, I lived in New York for a little while pre-pandemic. Empty subway cars usually mean that they don't have AC or they smell really bad or there's a giant spill or something. So avoid the really empty subway cars during peak hours. And don't be tough. Hold on to the handrails, just do it. And if there's an elderly person or a handicapped person or a parent with a child, please offer them your seat. That's just common courtesy. And even when you're visiting a city, you just want to be respectful of the people around you. So, yeah, again, navigating, don't be intimidated. You'll figure it out. And then, like planning your trip, like Ali said, branch out from Times Square, not just for where you're staying, but like you'll be overwhelmed by tourists in Times Square, and there's plenty of shopping and food outside of that area. In fact, you'll end up getting more local restaurants outside of Times Square. Don't just go to the chains, go to the local restaurants. There's so much good food in New York City, which we will talk about later in this series. Plan your bathrooms in advance. Public restrooms are very hard to come by. So large parks generally will have a bathroom. Like Central Park has a bathroom. You're not supposed to, but you can go into the lobby of any like big hotel, and as long as you just act like you're a guest, you can probably use their hotel bathroom. Grand Central Station. So generally places like that, but then like museums, if you're paying to get in, those will have bathrooms, of course, and restaurants. You can go into Starbucks and buy a drink and then use the bathroom. But just plan accordingly because they're very hard to come by. And like literally, New York City is so expensive. You got to plan in advance. Like I just went for, I think, 4 days and it was like easily $1,500. Like you're going to end up spending a good amount of money. So plan ahead. And yeah, branch out from those touristy places. And if you want to fit in like a local too, here's one tip that I know as someone who lived there that I would so appreciate if tourists would stop doing. Please stop walking very slowly, several people across on a sidewalk. Don't stop mid sidewalk to take pictures. Like, remember that this isn't just a city for people to visit. People live and work in the city. So stay to the right when you're on busy sidewalks, like treat it like a highway, things like that. And just don't take up the whole sidewalk. Just be courteous of other people. And then finally, so in terms of the safety of the city, I know that's a concern for some people, but the thing is, there are always people everywhere. So the chances of something large happening are slim to none. The things that might happen would be like pickpocketing. So don't carry your phone or wallet or anything valuable in your back pockets. Stay in a group at night, etc. The thing that you might want to look for that's different in New York than other places, pedestrians do not pay attention to walk signs. So if there aren't cars coming either way, if you want to feel like a real New Yorker, go ahead, walk, jaywalk. Everyone will encourage it if they live in New York. But watch out for bikes because bikes in the bike lanes pay attention to rules of the road even less than cars in New York. That being said, traffic is crazy, like cars, buses, trucks, everything. They're trying to get through that crazy traffic as fast as possible. So make sure you're watching out. And you're going to be walking a lot. So New York City fashion is, well, fashionable, but make sure to wear comfortable shoes. That is a must. It's a city where you will walk 10 miles without even realizing it. And you're going to want to make sure that your feet are not barking. The dogs are not barking, in other words. So, yeah, definitely make sure you have your comfortable shoes. And it's a gross city too. Like honestly, it smells bad. It's like there's trash everywhere, there's rats, etc. We're making this city sound bad. It's not. It's a fantastic city. But make sure you bring hand sanitizer, like a portable little hand sanitizer so that you can stay clean and germ-free wherever you go.
Yeah, those are all really great tips. Something I did want to add is like, don't be afraid to ask for directions either. Like, people are helpful. I know that New York City gets a bad rap, like New Yorkers are so rude, yada, yada, yada. But like, there actually are some nice people there. It's like any other city. Of course, there's going to be rude people, but I think New York City especially gets a bad rap. Just ask if you're not sure. Be kind to the locals. Like, they know there's tourists, they know people don't know where they're going. So just be patient, ask for directions, and be kind because New Yorkers aren't mean. We're New York, not New York City. We don't live in New York City. Regan used to, but we are nice people, believe it or not. So, just a little
Yeah.
plug for us New Yorkers. We are kind people.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
But some positive and negatives of visiting during each season is something we want to talk about. We don't really do that in other episodes, but we figure we have a wide variety of experiences going to the city, so we figured we would highlight each season some positives and negatives of being in New York City. So the fall is coming up. It's a great time to be in the city. There's fall colors in Central Park. New York itself is just beautiful in the fall. It's also known as shoulder season, so the prices are going to be lower and there's going to be less crowds. Summer is over, everyone's back in school. And there's going to be cooler temperatures, which is a really awesome time to go because when winter comes, the holiday decorations start popping up. Lots and lots of people start showing back up for ice skating at Rockefeller. It's going to be a lot of holiday stuff going on between just people coming to look at the decorations. There's going to be plays, Broadway week. There's going to be New Year's Eve. Tons of stuff going on. That means it's going to be more expensive. Also, it's going to be cold and snowy. You're not going to want to be walking everywhere having to worry about the ice or the snow. So, not saying don't go and enjoy it during the winter, but there's better seasons to see New York City. That brings us to spring. So this is also considered the shoulder season. So prices are good. There's flower festivals and shows. The crowds do start creeping back up though because summer is next and it's going to be crowded, hot, smelly, like Regan said. There's going to be outdoor concerts and plays, which are awesome. We also noted it's expensive. The summer, everyone wants to be there because it's actually good weather. Everyone's off of school. There's also restaurant weeks and Broadway week. So there is lots to do in the summer, but that also means more people and higher prices. So try to plan your trip accordingly. I know some people can only go in the summer. We're not saying don't go, but if you're able to go in the shoulder seasons, we highly recommend those times of year.
Yeah, I mean, every season has its positives and negatives, just like Allie said. Like, if you're planning to go in winter, definitely try to go like November, December, because New York at Christmas and during the holidays is pretty magical. But then Allie's right. You kind of want to skedaddle out of there because it's going to get cold and it's going to get snowy, and snow in the city is pretty rough. So, yeah, try to avoid that, but you'll have a great time. And there are things to do all the time. There's a reason it's the city that never sleeps. So we're going to dive in here now with some things to do in New York City. There's so much, so we're going to kind of narrow in on some of the better things. For starters, of course, there's the Great White Way, Broadway, which is one of my favorite reasons for always going to the city. And Broadway, you can buy your tickets in advance. You can absolutely do that. Shows do sell out, especially if they are Tony Award winning shows, popular shows, etc. But there are ways to score Broadway tickets for cheap. You can enter Broadway lotteries for shows in which you enter your name and you can get up to 2 tickets for a discounted price. You don't get to choose your seats or anything, but then you are entered into a lottery, and they most often it's 1 to 2 days ahead of the performance. They will draw names, and if you win, you are eligible to buy discounted tickets to the show. And that's really great. I've gotten front row tickets for like because I won a lottery. You never know where you're going to sit, and usually the seats are pretty good. I have never gone on a trip to New York and not won the lottery, so you have pretty good chances then. You can also get rush tickets where if you want to get up super early in the morning and head to the box office to get in line, and I'm not joking, people get in line at like 5 a.m. I've done it before. So there are options for cheaper tickets. TKTS is a great way to get day of tickets for discounted price. And Today Tix is another resource for getting those tickets pretty cheap. If you're going right now, I would recommend seeing Into the Woods. I just saw it and it's phenomenal. There's also kind of a really unique experience called Sleep No More at the McKittrick Hotel. It's an immersive theater performance where you're in a hotel, you go between all of these different rooms and you get different pieces of a story, and it's based on Macbeth. Oops, you're not supposed to say that, but that's a theater thing. We don't need to worry about that here, but it's really cool. So if you're looking for something more immersive, maybe try that out.
That sounds awesome. I'm not super into theater like Regan is, but that definitely sounds like something I would even enjoy doing. But for me, I'm more interested in the sports in New York. Like I hinted at, I am a Yankees fan. So highly recommend going to a Yankees game. Regan's not super into sports, but she just went to a Yankees game. So it's just one of those things. You're in New York, might as well see the Yankees if they're in town. You could see the Mets, but like, who really wants to see the Mets? There's also the New York Giants and the Jets if you're into football, and then the New York Knicks if you're into basketball. Those are all great sporting events that you can attend. They're mostly great teams, so you can probably have a really good experience, whether they win or lose. There's going to be tourists, locals, everyone in between, so it's usually a fun time when you do get to go to those sporting events. But if you're not into the sports or theater, they have concerts happening all the time, whether that's outdoor or indoor, just depends on the time of year. You could go to Madison Square Garden, Lincoln Center, Juilliard, Radio City Music Hall to see the Rockettes. That's a really popular one. Bryant Park, and then Pier 17 Rooftop. Those are all really great spots to see a concert if you want to go indoor or outdoor.
Yeah, and popping back to that tip there of doing your research ahead of time, when you know your dates, literally just search concerts happening these dates, and there will be like 20 options each night. And there are a bunch of like little teeny tiny clubs that have music and stuff too, so definitely just look into that. But then if concerts aren't available, which I don't know when that would ever happen, but let's just say it does. You can actually get free tickets to TV show recordings. Things like Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, The View. There's a bunch of shows that tape at the NBC studios. And they're free, but you have to keep an eye on the Twitter pages for the ticket releases because they're going to randomly release the tickets and then you immediately, like Jimmy Fallon sells out pretty much immediately, releases at noon, they're gone at noon. So if you're interested in something like that, that's something free to do. And also you just have to keep an eye on it, but super fun. And similar to concerts, there are outdoor movies in the summer on rooftops, in parks, like parks that have great skyline views. So that's a really cool thing to do in the summer if you have kids too. But so yeah, check that out too.
Yeah, lots of great options. Like we said, year round, there's always going to be something to do. But there's things inside, outside. So we're going to touch upon attractions and places to visit now. Some of these are going to be indoors, outdoors. Some might have tickets that you have to buy. So just make sure you are doing more in-depth research. If you have questions, email us, send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we'd be happy to point you in the right direction. But so starting off with attractions and places to visit, there's a variety of different observation decks. It has a very iconic skyline in New York City. Lots of things you want to see from a higher vantage point. So you could go to the One World Observatory, Top of the Rock, the Edge, and the Empire State Building. Those are probably the top four that you'd want to go and check out. Of course, there's restaurants that you can get great views from as well. But these are the more well-known places. You can visit Times Square, like we said. You can do that, just don't make that your whole trip. There's plenty more to do in New York City than just Times Square and going to the M&M store. Okay, so there's a lot more, and you don't want to be spending like $10 on one bag of M&Ms. Anyways, that's a generous price. Probably more like 30, but
there is. What I will say, there is a Krispy Kreme in Times Square now, Allie.
Oh boy, gotta get those donuts.
Gotta get those hot and fresh.
Plus, like, there's the Naked Cowboy in Times Square. I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. All the characters in Times Square. Oh my gosh. At all costs, avoid the characters in Times Square. Newsflash, that's not actually SpongeBob, folks. It's not actually him. Don't stop and let him take your picture for $20 or whatever they're charging. Like, just avoid them. Smile and look the other way and very quickly run in the other direction. So, yeah, there's my little tidbit for there.
Times Square is an odd place. Check it out for like maybe an hour and then go on to bigger and better things. But there's Grand Central Station and then Coney Island as well. All great options for getting out of Times Square if you're feeling adventurous and don't want to just go look at characters and M&Ms. So I know we just threw a lot of information at you, so we'll wrap it up here for today. So be sure to tune in for part 2 in a couple of weeks because we have even more information for you that you do not want to miss.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. Come escape with us again every other Tuesday. Give us a subscribe and a follow on all of our social media and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until we chat next time, wander on.